I know that we hear that all the time, like there's a connection, there's a mind-body connection. And I'm not sure that it's always explained in a way that maybe you can grasp and truly understand what it means when we say that the mind and the body are really connected. And so this is what I'm doing here today. We're going to talk about the mind that's inside the body that you work out here in this gym, okay? I love interaction, I love dialogue, I love discussion. If you have something to offer, if you have a question, please stop me. I, by no means do I like to talk the full time. I think that that's boring. So sometimes I might just stop and ask you questions. If you want to share, you can share. If not, like that's perfectly okay. Okay, so I know a little bit about you. See, Yvette, you're a physician.
Yeah.
Yeah. Faisal, you're from Bangladesh and you own the joint.
You
Yes.
got it. Good memory.
And Kenneth, you're working down the street and you're
Right.
bringing everything to your job. High expectations the whole time. And Kevin, you're a software engineer and not so much stress. Yeah? And you live right around the corner. So, okay, so I know where to find you. So I printed these out. Originally I had a PowerPoint. And it's a very short PowerPoint. But these are obviously for you to keep. If you want to take notes, you can take notes. And so, you know, when even before I went into fitness, and I'm on the first slide where it says introduction, even before I went into fitness, I obviously was a person that wanted to work out, right, before I became a trainer. And I just remember that I had that moment where like, I was looking in the mirror and I just didn't feel good. I was like, I don't feel good. Like I don't feel strong. I was coming up on like 30 years old and starting to feel like things are what's happening, things are changing. And so I remember that I was like, okay, that's it. I'm done with just going for a run, because I was a big runner. I'm like, okay, I think I need to do something about like this and like this or whatever. And I remember that I walked into a gym. I had absolutely no idea how my body had gotten to the state that it was in. And I had no idea what I was really doing in the gym with weights. But I decided to just like, well, let me try and watch. People seem to be doing this. Okay, I'll do that, right? And then I picked up weight that was too heavy, and I did like a few, and then I put them down. And then I saw somebody else on some machine pushing this, and I was like, okay, let me do that, and finagled the weights. Oh my God, the next day, I thought I was gonna die, right? I was really sore, I was in a lot of pain, and I felt super lost. I felt like I don't really know what is going on with my physical body, and I don't really know how to fix it. Like I don't have a clue. And so, after about 6 months of this, of trying to figure out what I was doing, I hired a trainer. And it was amazing, right? Because the trainer was the person who helped me like figure out how I'd gotten to the point where I was. And he helped me, of course, like repair like some of the parts of my body that needed some repair, needed some corrective exercises, and I was so grateful. But I remember that was like very eye-opening for me. And so when I think about like mental health, I know, myself included, before I ever went to school, there was some kind of like awareness that something was not okay. Like something is not okay with me. I don't know what it is, but I just feel off, right? So then people would ask, well, how do you feel? I'd be like, I don't know, I don't know how to describe it. I don't know, like something's wrong, I don't know, And so I think that a lot of people, certainly after the pandemic, or because of the pandemic, are in this place where they have a sense that something is off. But much like me, when I first walked into a gym, you may not know, like, well then how would I figure it out? Because the reality is, many people may not have time to go to therapy. That's barrier number one. And barrier number two is good luck finding a therapist, right? Like if any of you have tried to find a therapist, it's, everywhere, it's a 6-month wait list, it's a year, sorry, I can't take any more patients, right? And so I thought this is a great way to just offer you tools and just to help you develop some kind of like understanding, right? So my goal for this particular session is just to help you develop awareness. And I've given you some tools to take with you. As a trainer, and Danny can attest this, and Faisal too, it's like when we whenever I trained somebody, there was a process once I became a trainer. It was general preparedness, like, okay, let's develop some awareness about what's weak, what we need to work on. There's that phase, and then maybe there's like a little bit of increasing the resistance and like just getting your body used to like this new space that you're in. And then we would move on. I would take the client and move on. We're gonna go to another phase. Now we're gonna be here for like 6 weeks, and we're gonna improve, and we're gonna work on balance, we're gonna work on coordination, and maybe some flexibility and mobility and all this fun stuff. We're just building on the first phase, and then we would go to the last phase, which was like, we would call it like strength endurance, high intensity, where, ooh, I'm really putting you through some really difficult stuff. It's gonna hurt and it's gonna stink, and you're not gonna get as much rest, right? But you're gonna get through it and you're gonna be fine. Literally, that is what we're doing in these 3 sessions. We're gonna start with general preparedness. Let's prepare the mind. Let's prepare you for just like the first phase of mental health, like awareness. And then we're gonna take you through, let's make it a little bit more difficult, and let's work on different things. And then the final phase, the last workshop that I plan to offer is just the, how do I get through those really difficult moments, like high intensity, and not necessarily feel like I need a huge timeout, like I need 5 minutes of rest, okay? Any questions so far? No, bueno. All right, so, okay. So, what the heck is general preparedness, right? So if you look at physical health, and again, this is developing awareness. So that trainer I hired, he was from the South. He was really funny. And I just remember like our first session, he was trying to assess where I was in like my physical health and my body. And he was like, all right, drop down. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, just get down and do some push-ups. And I was like, do some push-ups? And he's like, yeah, come on, get down. And I was like, okay. And I kid you not, like I thought, I don't know, I could do a push-up, right? And I got down on my hands and my feet, and I collapsed. It was nowhere near close. I just went like this and boom, just hit the floor. And I was like, okay, I had no idea that my chest was so weak. And so we, as you can see like on the left, we went through all of these things, all of these different exercises and techniques to figure out what was, I don't want to say deficient, but what was in need of some kind of corrective exercise or strengthening, and it was in that phase that he was able to develop like a plan for me, right? But we stayed in this first general preparedness phase, again, for like 6 weeks, right? So when we talk about mental health, there's something that is very useful to know about just how our mental health is connected to just how our thoughts are connected to how we feel, and also like our behavior. I think a lot of times we don't necessarily make a connection between what we're thinking and then what we're actually doing, right? I think for many of us, myself included, right? I found that the two were separate, right? I thought mental health was just over here in some other world. So there's a theory, and it's called cognitive behavioral theory, and I'm not gonna bore you with the background of it, and you seem to have like, maybe
I know it, yeah.
You know it, right? Yeah, so cognitive behavioral theory is essentially that our thoughts, whatever we're thinking, whatever's going on up here in the real estate, is going to trigger emotions, okay? And these emotions are then going to dictate behavior. And if you look at those little cards that I put, that's your first card, right? That's just, hey, wow, is there a connection maybe between what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and then what I'm doing, okay? And so this is like the first tool that I wanted to give you, just so that you might be able to like then start to make the connection. And so when I say like developing awareness, okay? If you look on the sheet, on the PowerPoint, here are the things, here are the questions, right, that you can ask yourself. When or where am I uncomfortable? And now, mind you, I put uncomfortable Because some of you may not have like the vocabulary to be like, when and where am I disgusted? Or you don't, like a lot of us don't know what the heck our emotions are, we just know that we don't feel comfortable, right? So it's like, okay, when and where am I uncomfortable? And that means, what am I doing? Like, am I at work? Am I at a party? Is it around my family? Right? Is it out in a public place? Is it on a date? Okay, so it's just like, okay, just noticing, like, wow, I'm suddenly noticing that I am uncomfortable in this place at this time, right? Okay, I'm aware of that. What am I thinking? Right? And so this is like the next step of like developing awareness. So like, let's say that you notice that you're uncomfortable and you notice like where you are and what you're doing. That's the moment where you can pause and say, what am I thinking? Right? Where are my thoughts? Again, a lot of us are having thoughts and we're not even connecting to them or recognizing anything that they have anything to do with the discomfort that we're feeling. Okay? Next question. Okay, so now let's just say that I am at a party, right? A social gathering. And I walk in and prior to walking in, I thought I was feeling okay, or maybe I didn't realize that I was already feeling a little bit uncomfortable. So I walk into the party, and suddenly I start to notice that I'm a little uncomfortable, right? And maybe what I become aware of is, now I'm having these thoughts, and these thoughts are, oh my God, everybody's looking at me. And they must be thinking that, you know, who invited me? And am I wearing the right thing? And oh my God, she's wearing something else. I should have worn those other shoes. And damn it, maybe my hair doesn't look okay. And what am I gonna say? I don't know anybody here. Right? Lots of thoughts could be hitting you all at once, not necessarily connected, right? You could be having lots of different thoughts. And so that's where I would like, okay, what am I thinking? What am I thinking here, right? And then, what am I feeling at the end of the day? I recognize that I have discomfort, but really what am I feeling? And again, this takes practice, because if you look on the back of that CBT card, on the back side of it, emotion wheel. Yeah, it's an emotion wheel. That one. Yeah, it's an emotion wheel. Like, it's a really great way to pinpoint how you're feeling. And mind you, I'm not going to be at a party and then suddenly pull out my emotion wheel, like, you know. But it's something that you can practice utilizing, so that you just become more aware of like how you're feeling. Because you might have a feeling that repeats itself and be like, oh my God, I was feeling this way at that party and I'm feeling this way now over here, right? So like, you develop awareness of how you're feeling. And then the last thing, the most important thing is, how is this affecting my behavior? Okay? So like, maybe how it affects my behavior is that I isolate myself in a corner. I feel uncomfortable, I don't want to approach anybody. Maybe it means that I fidget a lot. Maybe it means that I drink a whole bunch in a hurry, right? Because I'm feeling discomfort. Maybe it means that I overeat at the buffet. Maybe it means, but I notice like, wow. And again, like, this is something, and I'm gonna talk about this at the end of the presentation, that is something that you practice. There's no expectation that you're gonna know how to do this like right away. This is something that you practice, and a big piece of this is just, the first thing is like noticing, when am I uncomfortable? When am I uncomfortable? What am I doing? What just happened, right? And then from there, just, okay, what are my thoughts, okay? Some other ways that you can develop awareness is, how is this showing up in my body? And when I say, how is it showing up in my body? It's quite literally, are my shoulders tense? Does my stomach feel like there are 8,000 butterflies going crazy, like on meth, in my stomach, right? Is my heart racing? Can I take a deep breath? Are my palms sweating? Are my armpits sweating? Am I having trouble, like even just, do I feel something in any other part of my body? Is it like my low back? I've had everything. Literally, I've had people share lots of different things. Like I just noticed it, like my low back hurts. Like, okay, that's interesting. That's how it shows up in your body. And it's, again, becoming aware. Like, okay, my shoulders are tense, right? Because sometimes we'll feel like the shoulders tense, and then from there, get to, I'm uncomfortable. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? And this is how it's showing up in my body. How is this impacting my overall function? Okay, now this is something that is more related to, like, if it's something a little more chronic, right? Like if you're noticing that your emotions, the way that they are and how they impact you, is suddenly now getting in the way of sleep. Is it getting in the way of my eating habits, right? Like when I'm feeling this way, do I notice anything about my sleep pattern? Like how many of you have ever like gone to bed and stared at the ceiling, or woken up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. and then suddenly your brain goes whoosh, and then you're just staring at the ceiling and like, right? Yeah, just like that. Is it impacting my sleep? Is it impacting my appetite? Do I get so, maybe do I feel so overwhelmed that I lose my appetite? Or do I overeat? Do I just mindlessly grab a bag of white cheddar popcorn because it's magical? But do I grab a bag of white cheddar popcorn and do I just eat the whole thing? Okay? So you want to look at things like that. Also, motivation and energy. Do I feel drained? Like, am I feeling super drained? I don't understand. I got good sleep. I'm feeling like super drained and I'm tired. Okay? A great question to ask yourself is like, when or where have I felt this way before? And then that's like you start to notice again, like patterns. You're making connections. Like, I felt this way at this party, and I'm also feeling this way maybe on this lunch date with a friend. Why am I'm feeling this way in both of these situations? Is this a thinking trap? Has anybody ever heard of a thinking trap? Yeah, thinking traps, let me tell you something. They're deadly, and they are so common. So, if you turn, it's one of the cards, yeah. Thinking traps, like this is a great way for you to identify if you're stuck in one. And when I say stuck in a thinking trap, it becomes a thought process that you can't seem to get out of, right? So like, filtering, it's when you dwell only on the negatives of a situation. Now mind you, these are patterns. This isn't necessarily like a one-time thing. Thinking traps tend to repeat and repeat and repeat. And they trigger, again, lots of emotions and impact behavior. One of the ones that probably is the most popular that I have ever worked with is personalization. Okay, like it's my fault that my boss is upset, right? Are you mad at me? Someone's behavior in your life changes and suddenly you're worried that it's something that you did, right? And then those thoughts lead to more thoughts, and then you find yourself in a loop of thoughts that you can't seem to climb out of, and all the while that you're having these thoughts, they are triggering all of these other emotions, which again is impacting like your behavior and what you're doing. Okay, thinking traps like overgeneralizing. Something happens in your life, something like maybe you get a flat tire. This always happens to me, right? It never goes my way, right? These are like sweeping generalizations about one thing that happened. Fortune telling, right? Fortune telling is predicting that something bad is gonna happen ahead of time and you don't really have any evidence, right? Oh, I have a presentation tomorrow and I just know it's not gonna go well. And I'm already in my head imagining the worst case scenario. It's just gonna go really bad, it's not gonna go good. And again, these are kind of the traps that we might find ourselves in at 2 o'clock in the morning. Like it's just gonna be terrible, it's just gonna stink, and I'm probably gonna get fired. And then one of the ones that goes hand in hand with that is catastrophizing. Okay, and I say these are all extremely common, right? These are not like very rare. No, these are actually very common. I'm not innocent. Like I'm a human. I'm growing as well, and like I have found myself being like, oh God, okay, I'm doing it. I need to stop doing that, okay? Catastrophizing. I left something at home. Oh no, I'm gonna be late to work, and oh my God, I'm probably gonna get fired. Oh my God, I'm gonna have to sell my house, or I'm probably gonna go bankrupt. I'm gonna end up homeless. Right? It's going from a flat tire, I am homeless, right? And again, this is a thought pattern that is very common, and we can find ourselves in one. So as you start to practice, noticing your thoughts, and then noticing how you feel, you might be able to reference this card and be like, maybe I'm catastrophizing, maybe I'm mind reading. Okay, we're gonna talk about some ways that you can just practice getting out of this trap, because it wouldn't help you any if I just gave you the trap and gave you an option to get out of it. And then lastly, I think probably one of the most important things is my behavior in unhealthy coping mechanisms, okay? Now here's the thing. I think just in my experience, both personal and professional, I don't know that we have ever been raised, some of us come from families where we were raised this way, but I think that our entire upbringing and the way that maybe we have been geared is to avoid discomfort, right? We are definitely a pleasure-seeking society. We want to feel good, we don't want to feel bad. If you were to do a Google search for books on how to be happy, I can guarantee you that you will find in the millions, right? There's always a new book on how to be happy, how to find it, how to nurture it, all of it. If you type in how to be miserable, you won't find anything. There's no book to really teach us on just how to be uncomfortable. Learn to be uncomfortable. No. We don't really have that kind of upbringing. So I think, in all fairness, I think most of the people that I work with and that I have worked with have developed unhealthy coping mechanisms simply because they're avoiding feeling uncomfortable, okay? Now, and I preface this with that there's no judgment here, right? Because I'm a human and I have used unhealthy coping mechanisms in my life. And unhealthy coping mechanisms could be substance use, right? Maybe I come home every day and I have 2-3 glasses of wine, which in our society is super normal, right? It's normalized. As a physician, you probably see this all the time. Super, I'm not getting rid of my wine, right? It's super normalized, right? I just come home and I have 3 glasses of wine, but my friends do it, and mommy and me, mommy wine at the birthday parties, which makes me nervous, but so there's, a lot of alcohol consumption, and the alcohol consumption in and of itself isn't necessarily terrible, it's our reliance on it. It's the relationship that we have with it that is unhealthy. I need this to feel better. If I don't have this, I'm gonna be really uncomfortable. So I need to cope. This is how I cope. For some people, shockingly, don't be mad at myself, exercise addiction, right? Exercise addiction. I was one of those people. I was super addicted to exercise. I had a very unhealthy relationship with it. And I would feel that I would fall apart unless I worked out that day, right? I didn't have my workout that day, things did not go well for me, okay? Social media, right? All right, I'm not gonna lie, I love TikTok. I'm not gonna lie, I'm putting it out there. I love TikTok. And TikTok again, TikTok is not the problem. It's when I don't feel good, if I go on TikTok and I lose myself for 6 hours just watching videos, maybe not healthy, right? Maybe not the healthiest thing for me. Avoidance is an unhealthy coping mechanism. I don't wanna do, I'm just gonna avoid. Compartmentalizing, right? I think we're really good at compartmentalizing. I'm just gonna tuck this back here and I'll just deal with it later. I'm gonna focus on this for now but we never deal with it, right? So we just kind of put things off because we don't want to be uncomfortable, okay? So for you, I don't know your lives, for you is it possible that, I have these thoughts, right? And then I feel this way, I don't feel good. And then I notice that I do this, I withdraw or I isolate. And then I also happen to notice that, wow, I play video games. for like 5 hours when I'm feeling this way. Holy cow, right? Again, the goal here, you're welcome, the goal here is not to have you change your coping mechanisms or even to judge them. Really, this is just, hey, wow, I had no idea. This just developing awareness, okay? Any questions?
What are I'm curious with these, the emotion wheel, is it just more, detail going out, or
Yeah.
do they have different levels? Like, is it just more detail as you go outward?
Just more detail.
Okay.
That's a great question. Yeah, so you start like right in the middle and like kind of land there, right? Like, okay, so I'm feeling bad, right? Like, I don't know, I feel bad. I don't know, right? So you start with bad and then you maybe like zoom out and say you like, oh, I'm feeling this way, right? I'm feeling this way, you know? So yeah, I'm sorry that the type is so small, like for my eyes.
Thank God for glasses.
Thank God for glasses, you said it, right? So, excuse me, I get this question all the time in therapy, like when I work with individuals, like, well, you know, I've been noticing that I'm feeling like really a lot of anxiety, right? And they've gotten good at like identifying, how do you know that you're feeling anxiety? And it's in the body, right? Like, oh, you know, my heart's beating, my palms start to sweat, and I don't feel good. But they'll be, and I'll say like, okay, but did you notice your thoughts? And I'm like, no, I really, no, seriously, I wasn't thinking anything. It just kind of came out of nowhere. Like it was just fine, I thought it was fine, and then suddenly I just started to feel all of this anxiety. And so that is possible. That is absolutely possible. And so when these things happen, there's like several things that you might consider, right? Do you have any upcoming changes that are pretty big, like life changes? Is something in the works that may not be fully on your radar, but it's coming? Maybe it's that. Maybe you're feeling a little bit of anxiety about like an upcoming change. On the flip side of that, and again, it depends on like your spiritual orientation, but a lot of times, like with clients, I found that when they're feeling a certain kind of way, and we really can't, like, what the heck, like there's no change, and a lot of times we have found that it's something that happened in the past, that same month, and it was significant, right? Like in one particular case, I had a woman who lost her mother, and it was a very traumatic loss, and it was in a particular month, and she was feeling a certain kind of way, and we'd made tons of progress, and then suddenly she was like, oh, like knocked down. And in conversation, right, it was like, oh, wow, it was this month, it was this time that this happened. And then she was able to connect it even, I feel this way every year. Every year, in May, I feel this way. I start to feel it. So it's just awareness for her, because then she's prepared. Now she knows, okay, every May, this is kind of like what I might be prepared for. And also able for her, like awareness for her, that maybe this is something that she needs to process. Maybe this is something that I need to work on, and we're able to work on it, right? Social media all day. Like if you suddenly don't feel good, and you're on your phone, and you're looking at social media, examine that. Like yeah, right? A lot of times, it happens so much, I find that so much with clients, right? I'll say like, oh really, okay, so what were you doing? Like, they tell me literally what you were doing. I don't know, it was just like I was lying in bed and I was on my phone. Oh, and what were you doing? Like, were you texting? Oh no, I was on social media. And that's when they ding, they're like, oh, okay, right? And social media might do it to you. Maybe you're not feeling good about where you are in your life, and suddenly you're on social media seeing all your friends living their best life, and then suddenly you're feeling like you're not living your best life, right? So that could be something to consider. The news, absolutely the news, right? So you're not necessarily thinking of something, and it isn't something that happened, but if you're watching the news, right, is it illogical that you might start to experience discomfort watching a war in Ukraine, watching the recent shootings or watching all of the horrors that are reported on the news, because nothing good is reported on the news, right? So just become aware of that. And then lastly, another one, is someone else upset? Like, am I in a space there where somebody is very obviously upset, angry, frustrated, and I'm close to them on some level? And is it possible that maybe their discomfort is kind of making me a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm not really thinking anything, I'm just noticing like their space, and it's making my space really uncomfortable, okay? So these are just some, you don't necessarily have to be having very specific thoughts to feel discomfort. You might just start to feel discomfort, and it's good for you to like become aware, right? I think the cell phone is one of the most eye-opening things for clients that I work with. They're like, wow, I had no idea it had that kind of impact. So if you turn to this page, tools. So I thought that I would put these tools here for you, right? Now, let me just preface this by saying, journaling, right? Because I think we hear that all the time. Oh, you should journal. I mean, yeah, not everybody likes to journal. Not everybody likes to write, right? It may not be like, writing may not be the thing that you like to do, and that is perfectly valid. And so I've had individuals do videos, right? Like if they like posting their selfies on Instagram, or they're okay with video. I've had clients that just make a video, right? They just talk about how they're feeling into their phone. Audio, like doing a voice memo. Like I'm just, I think certainly when it comes to like thoughts and how we're feeling, there's something about getting it out. And you may not have a space, you may not have someone to share it with, but you feel like, I just need to get this out. And you just talk it out. Talk it into your phone, or you do a video. These are just options. Or if you like to write it out, And the reason that is important is because there is something very powerful about removing or getting the stuff out of your system, right? Out of your body. Like, let me just get it out of my mind and onto something. And it also gives you an opportunity to then go back in the future and read it and maybe notice, like, wow, I was there, and now I'm feeling better and I'm over here, right? It's almost like evidence. Like, okay. The emotion wheel, obviously I printed that for you, so that's something that you can have. The thought records, I didn't bring them, they're not attached, but I am happy, if you are interested, and Danny, you can share my email, I will email you a print, like a thought record, and it's more like a worksheet, if you like to write things down. Now, the smartphone apps on here, these are all fantastic. They're all fantastic. The CBT Thought Diary, Mind Dog, Dailyo, Mood Kit, and what these apps do, and these are great. And the reason that this is important is because as you start to become like more aware of how you're feeling, I know that for a lot of my clients in the past, there's almost like this belief that they're awful and they're down all the time. Like, I'm just miserable all the time. I always feel down, right? When I have them log their actual mood day to day, they're able to go back and go, oh wow, I'm not really that low all the time at all. There's like a lot of time during the week that I'm actually really happy. And it's just awareness, right? It's just complete and utter awareness. Like, wow, I had no idea. Here I was thinking that I was one way all the time, but if I look at this mood kit, or this mood app, it's showing me that, it's not as bad as I think it is. The other thing is, it gives you an opportunity to then develop like more awareness of like patterns, right? Like I said, I noticed that my mood shifted here, like at this party, and then I noticed that I had the same mood over here at this like social gathering. And maybe I had like the same mood and the same dip in mood at work. And then it's just developing that awareness and like trying to figure out like, okay, what's the common denominator here? What might be happening that I'm uncomfortable in these three spaces, okay? I think, I want to say, all of them, there may be a couple that have a cost, but it's very low. It's very low, and it's so worth it, you know. So if you're interested in maybe logging, like your thoughts, I strongly recommend it. And these are some apps that you could do it on. Okay. Okay, so now, let's just say, right, we've developed some awareness, right? We're gonna go get some awareness. So, in fitness, right, when I was a trainer, again, like I said, we would go through like this first 6 weeks of general preparedness, but within that 6 weeks, towards the end, I'd start to make things a little bit harder, right? And there were lots of ways that I did that. I would increase the weight that they were lifting, I would increase the frequency, the duration, the speed, decreasing the rest periods just a little bit, isometric exercises, those really stink. Do you make them do that? Because they're so hard.
Yeah, but
Yeah, so we did, you know, I would make it harder in a way that was like relevant to them, right? So I had this gentleman, and I love telling this story because this just illustrates perfectly what I'm talking about. I had this gentleman, and you know, he was like in his 50s, and he was like in okay shape, right? So, you know, we did, and he had an ego the size of Texas, so I just have to preface it. So, you know, we started with the first, you know, 4 weeks of like general conditioning, lifting, and he was feeling really strong. And then I decided, okay, I'm gonna push him a little bit. He needs to be pushed, right? And the reason that he needed to be pushed is because you know, or maybe you don't know, but when we need to build muscle and strength, there is a process. There's biomechanics behind this, right? And that is that with enough resistance that our muscles feel, the fibers tear, right? And then when they repair, they grow. That's like basic biomechanics. So knowing this, I said, okay, I'm gonna put him on the sled. We're gonna do the weight sled. And I put, you know, what I thought was like a good amount of weight, but not impossible. And so he's like, that's it? That's what we're gonna do? And I said, yeah, here's what you're gonna do. And I kind of like demonstrated for him, you're gonna push it all the way to the end of the gym. And he was like, oh, I got this, right? So he got on the sled, and like he pushed it, and it maybe moved like an inch. And he was like, oh, he's like, that's heavy. That's really heavy. And I was like, yep. And then he pushed it again, didn't really get very far. And he got really frustrated, and he got angry. He was like, hell. He's like, this is like too heavy. I can't push it. You know, and my, you know, in my, I guess, rookie phase of training, I got really nervous, and I took off like a couple of plates so that it would be easier for him, right? And I recognized that as like, wow, what a huge disservice. Like, I'm not supposed to do that. I'm supposed to make it uncomfortable for you because I want you to like grow. And so when it comes to our mind, right, there is a way to increase resistance. There is a way to like allow discomfort and to be aware of it and not do anything necessarily to get out of it. Does that in an unhealthy way, right? So one of the first things that I share with clients, certainly when we've been working, is just like, okay, why don't we talk about like a way that you can like go through this really difficult moment that you have coming up, and let's find a way for you to develop some kind of resilience, emotional resilience, okay? What this means really is, rather than run from discomfort, it's recognize it and then lean into it. Like, this is gonna be uncomfortable, but I'm not gonna run. I'm just gonna lean into it. And a big piece of this is, can I lean into discomfort and not judge? Not judge myself, not judge anybody. Can I just let it be and not beat myself up because I'm feeling uncomfortable? One of the things that I used a lot in the physical fitness world when I am challenging somebody is I would ask them or remind them, engage your core, right? Engage your core, it grounds you, right? It gives you like a certain strength that you will need to be able to manage that extra resistance. It's the same thing with mental health. You have to engage like your inner self, and you have to connect truly with your physical body to ground yourself in a moment of discomfort. And here's what I mean by that, because that sounds like really abstract, right? So for example, let's just say that you know ahead of time, you're going to a party. You know that you don't do well in social settings. It makes you a little bit uncomfortable, you're a little bit anxious, you're not sure how it's gonna go, it's kind of awkward talking to people you don't know, all of it, right? But you don't avoid it, you go, right? So let's just say that you walk in, now you're aware. Okay, I know how I'm gonna feel. We're not gonna necessarily like try to change that. I'm feeling a little bit discomfort, right? And then there's a way to like engage your core and ground yourself. And one of the ways, and it's on here, is like a technique that we call the 5 senses technique. Have any of you heard of that? Oh, it's fabulous. So let's just say you're at this party and you're just noticing that you're super uncomfortable, but you want to be able to enjoy the party without having to leave, is to simply utilize all of your senses in a way that is strategic, right? So you start with your eyes, and you use your eyes to point out like 5 things, right? So that could be, I see a dumbbell, I see a person, I see a trainer, I see a bike, I see a purse, and obviously you're doing this internally. And then you go to like your nose, I smell popcorn, I smell chicken fingers, I smell chicken, I smell pizza. And then it's tongue, I taste this, I taste that, it's touch. So you go through all of your senses and you repeat it over and over, and you will notice that once you come back into your body, you're not quite as up here, maybe, and spiraling, and you're much more centered and able to move forward and be okay with a little bit of discomfort. Like, okay, I'm still a little bit uncomfortable. This isn't like my favorite place to be, right? But I'm grounding myself a little bit. I'm gonna ground myself by coming into my body and getting out of here, okay? Exercising the mind. How do we do that, right? So we have like, we're increasing the resistance, but I really wanna exercise my mind. And so how would I do that? So there's 3 examples on here. One of them is ask for evidence, and one of your cards has this, is like, be a lawyer, okay? The second method is what I call the science, and these are just examples. The scientific method is like, you have a hypothesis about what you think is going on, prove it, right? Oh, I'm convinced, let's just say you realize you're in a thought trap, and you're convinced that you know what the other person is thinking. They definitely don't like me. I'm sure they're mad at me. They probably hated my presentation. Oh my God, and you're thinking all these things, and you have a hypothesis. Prove it. Prove that the other person is thinking, or that the other person doesn't like you, or that they didn't like your presentation. You probably can't prove it. But it's a way to like, okay, challenge your thinking track. Probably one of my favorite analogies to use when we think about like challenging your thinking tracks, it's like allowing that resistance and not necessarily running it, but then challenging it, right? Like, okay, I'm gonna challenge what's going on here, is forging a new path. And what I mean by that is, let's just say that you have figured out that you have a particular thought trap, okay? Maybe it's catastrophizing. Maybe you recognize that your thoughts immediately go to like from a flat tire to, oh my God, I'm homeless, okay? What happens in these situations is you get a flat tire, you get out of your car, and that's sort of like you going down a path in your car that has potholes, that has danger, but it's the path you know. Like you're always on this path, but it's comfortable. Catastrophizing for me is very comfortable. I like this road, right? What I always say is like, forge a new path. Just imagine that instead of getting into a beat up car and going down a beat up path, that you're gonna get in a different car. And you take it in steps. Maybe I get in a different car. And getting in a different car means I'm gonna interrupt that thought process. I'm not going to catastrophize. What does it look like for me to get in another car? Maybe it means that I get in another car and I'm only focusing on the problem at hand. And I'm not allowing my mind to take me like even further to a place that's even scarier than where I am, okay? So these are just some examples. Probably the most effective ones are the ones that you have on your card that I have used with clients, okay? So when it comes to a thought trap, you're either going to be a lawyer or you're gonna be a detective, okay? And you're gonna be a lawyer, and what does it mean to be a lawyer? Ask for evidence. Really, like, you have this internal dialogue, you have all these thoughts, you're recognizing that it's a trap. Ask for evidence. What is your evidence that this is true? And seek it, and you won't find it, right? But if you challenge your thoughts, they won't be able to continue. You constantly interrupt that loop, right? Because these thought patterns are not necessarily random. I want you to think of these thought patterns as like a pathway in your head, like with potholes, the dangerous path. It's something that you've already built in your brain. We need to forge a new path, and this is how you do it. Another way is be a detective. And what does a detective do? Right? Gets to a crime scene, doesn't just take it for what it is. Be like, why, I gotta look around, and I gotta talk to different people, and I have to check and see and gather all the evidence, and then see if I can determine whether or not, or what really happened here, okay? And so, in both scenarios, what you're doing, again, is you're interrupting that thought process. You're not allowing those thoughts to continue, okay? Now, it doesn't mean that you're not gonna be uncomfortable, you're still gonna be uncomfortable. Those of us that have really, really strong thought patterns, guess what? The first time you try to challenge it, you'll be like, no, this is impossible. Like, no, it feels weird. It feels weird. I like my thought pattern, right? I'm used to it, I don't wanna change it. But if you recognize that your thought patterns like cause you to feel a certain kind of way, and it impacts your behavior, inevitably you wanna change it. You wanna change that. Anybody have any questions?
Would that mean distracting yourself from the thought pattern or other thoughts? Like getting on another thought pattern wheel?
Oh, that happens. I mean, is it possible that you could be in a thought pattern and then go into another thought pattern? Sure. But distracting yourself is another unhealthy coping mechanism, right? You're just distracting yourself from, wait, I have this thought pattern. Why do I have this thought pattern? And that, honestly, that's for the next session, right? Because I know myself, when I first learned of this, it wasn't enough for me to just have the awareness. Now I was like, no, help. Oh, no, I wanna know where these thoughts came from. I wanna know where they're coming from, because I wanna address that. I don't just wanna address my thoughts, I wanna know. And so the second session that we have, if you come, we'll talk about what is it really that drives these thoughts? Where do these thoughts come from? And once you determine that, the work that you do on a mental health, with your mental health, spiritual health, emotional health, is a whole other level. It's like phase 2 of training. It will make you more resilient, more flexible, more adaptable, more mobile. You will have more balance and more coordination. So I'm sorry that I'm not giving you the answer today.
No.
You're gonna have to come to the second one.
Looking forward to it, sounds
No, it's super important. And then, lastly, like putting it into practice, so like, what the heck does this look like, right? Like, what do you mean, what does it look like? I think structure, routine is insanely important. I think when it comes to mental health, sometimes it's maybe a little too like fluid, like, oh, well, maybe I'll meditate. And now mind you, meditation is not for everyone. It is not for everyone, and that is okay. Like, that is perfectly okay. I think when it comes to putting this into practice, I want you to think of it as like reactive measures and proactive, right? Reactive measures are utilizing that card in the moment. Like, I'm feeling uncomfortable, let me stop, let me ground myself, let me analyze or explore my thoughts, how is this making me feel, and what am I doing? And now, let me challenge my thoughts. So that's reactive, right? It's when it happens. Proactive, in terms of like establishing a routine for your mental health, there's lots of different ways. Now, obviously, a good way, great. Meditation is a good thing to do. But you have to be realistic. For for what that looks like for you, right? An hour every day, if you've never meditated, good luck with that. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen. Especially if you tend to live up here, and you're always thinking, meditation will make, no. I always like, tell my clients, be super realistic. Maybe, if you notice that you have some time in the morning, what if it's just 5 minutes? What if it's 3 minutes? What if it's 1 minute? And that could be using the Calm app if you don't have it, like I highly recommend it. Using an app to help you through a guided meditation, whatever it is, that's an option, and that's proactive. And when I say proactive, it means like you're just allowing yourself to observe whatever is happening up here without fighting it, without necessarily like trying to make your thoughts go away. It's, let me just observe my thoughts as though it were a river, they were just a river, and I'm just watching them. Like, I'm not chasing any of them, I'm not jumping in, I'm just watching for a minute. That's it, right? Intentional thoughts. Spending time in an intentional, like mindfulness. And what I say by that, what I mean by that is, let's just say that you have an uncomfortable situation at work, and you have somebody that you really just, or you're really stressed about something that's happening at work, but you've gotten really good at avoiding it, or compartmentalizing it, or maybe drinking it away, or exercising it away, or like you've realized because you've developed awareness, holy cow, I have this like, maybe not the best coping mechanism, and you wanna try, like, okay, what if every day I allow myself, or I pick a day and I allow myself, I give myself permission to think about it, to really explore it, to realize like that it makes me uncomfortable, maybe think about how it really makes me feel. Let me just be with it. Again, you have to decide what that looks like for you. That could be 3 hours on Saturday. It could be Friday morning. But that's something that, again, you put into practice. And then the last thing is, in a proactive manner, always be aware of like somatic symptoms, like what's coming up in your body. Just be super aware of that. You know, like maybe it's, oh, I'm noticing that my chest is tight, right? Or I'm noticing that my neck is really tight. You can do something about it, maybe. But it's just practice being aware. That's it. Practice being aware. Whether that's 5 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day. So when I say aware, I mean it's like whole body situation, and just be like fully with it. Okay. So are there any questions?
Knowing that you know now, in terms of like your education, working as a therapist, are the things that you come look back on? I know you mentioned that one example with that gentleman from Cheeseland. Is there anything, whether it be physical or conversation pieces with your people, that you feel like that would have been great to bring up or talk about, or something really like when you were working in the fitness industry, knowing what you know now?
Oh.
Is there like one comment or a couple of things that you feel like this would definitely been beneficial to that?
Yes. I mean, I think probably what jumps to my mind is, I don't know, I wish that I had known the impact of stress and anxiety on the physical body, and what happens when you bring that stressed physical body into the gym and add more stress to that body. Like, had I known that, I would have changed a lot of what I did, right? Because, you know, back when I was in the fitness industry, it was like CrossFit was easy. Like, we were crazy. The things that we did with our clients, like, it was like, how hard can we make it and how difficult? And I recognize now, like, wow, I was really putting a lot of people in danger, certainly the clients that I knew that were extremely stressed. And so if, you know, when it comes to something like anxiety, which is so common nowadays, I think so many people have anxiety, right? And there's something that you may not know or may know about, like, the stress response and what it does in your physical body. So just to illustrate, if you are hot, let me give you an example. let's just say you're having thoughts and you're catastrophizing. You're on your way here to the gym, right? And you're catastrophizing. You had a really bad day at work. You got into like some kind of altercation with your boss, or your boss did something to you, and suddenly you internalize it, you personalize it. Oh my God, I'm gonna get fired. And on your way here to hear what you're thinking is, I'm gonna get fired. And oh my God, what is my family gonna think? And oh my God, what if I lose my home? What is, how am I gonna feed my kids? What if I have to like file for bankruptcy? Oh my God, what if we end up, right, all of that, right? Let's just say you're having those thoughts. There's something that happens in your brain, and there's a little tiny piece of your brain called the amygdala, and your amygdala is like the air traffic controller. It controls lots of different things, right? So the amygdala, it's like it gets pressed. Beep! All of these thoughts send a message that you are in danger. And when I say danger, our body, we're primitive. This is a primitive response. I'm in danger. There is a dinosaur that's coming to eat me. And so when that happens, your mind, your body doesn't know how to separate real danger and perceived. It's only getting a message from your thoughts. So the amygdala sends a message, like sends a text message to your whole body and says, listen, we're in danger and we all need to mobilize, right? So your cortisol hormones shoot up, adrenaline starts flowing through your system, and it's preparing you because it thinks that there's danger and you might have to fight a dinosaur or run for your life. So what that means is your heart starts to race, right? It's preparing you. Your heart starts to race, your palms get sweaty, and you might feel like a little bit like uncomfortable, right? A lot of people report when they have anxiety, they just feel like out of sorts, I can't sit still, I don't feel good, I feel restless, right? So all of that is happening at once, just because you got into an altercation or you had an interaction with somebody and your thoughts took you there. They took you to that place where it's really dangerous. And then you come in here, right? And all that. Now, in some cases, all of that is helpful. You get a lot of adrenaline and cortisol, you get superhuman strength, maybe, but it's not always good for you. It's not that kind of elevated cortisol, that elevated stress over time, and I think Danny probably knows this, it causes wear and tear on your physical system, like over time. It leads to weight gain, poor concentration, loss of coordination, yeah. So that is what I wish.
Yeah,
Injuries,
People get hurt.
so many times I've noticed, like, and I found this to be true with lots of my acquaintances and families is, I remember I was working with this gal, she was very stressed. She was going through and this was when I was a trainer, she was going through like a divorce, she was avoiding it, didn't want to think about it, just wasn't really dealing it, and I remember I kept telling her, you really should slow down a little, maybe take some time, but no, she was training like 5 days a week, she was hitting it really hard, and I just remember that she called me one day and she's like, I'm not going to be able to train for 3 months. And I'm like, what do you mean, what happened? She goes, I was walking in a shopping center and I didn't see the curb and I stepped down and I tore the ligaments on both sides of my ankle. It was so horrifying. It was a freak accident, but I think about that, I'm like, your system was so taxed. You were so taxed. And I think about that all the time. So like, if this is where you are on your way to the gym and you're having these thoughts and you're noticing, shit, I'm in a thought trap. I'm in a thought trap. Ground yourself. Use your senses. Maybe take some deep breaths. And I say maybe because if your heart's already accelerated, trying to deep breathe doesn't work. It only makes it worse. So don't do that. But maybe like find your center through senses. Something that's going to remind your system that there's no dinosaur coming to chase you. And you know what, Danny? Like honestly, if I had a client, if I was a trainer and a client, and I knew this, I would train my clients to tell me, like, I'm feeling really supercharged and I need to find my body. And maybe that means we do some light warm up and some light breathing to take you to bring you back into your body. Did I answer your question? Okay. Any other questions?
I gotta run at Zoom in 10 minutes.
Well,
Thank you.
don't run.
But that was awesome. You're awesome.
Thank you, I hope you
You're-
come to
you're a
the
great
next
speaker.
one. Oh, thank you.
No, seriously.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you'll be here again? Is it
I will
okay
be
to-
here, I think the next one
Alright,
is
cool.
in July, like a
the,
month out.
the next one.
Yeah.
Just like figure out a date and time, I think it's probably be like middle of the week, kind of 6 p.m. I think.
Okay,
Works
cool.
best for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, cause I'm gonna get.
We'll email everybody in regards to another date and time. Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
It'll work soon.
Alright, bye, Jen.
Bye,
Thank
you were awesome.
you. Thank you
Thanks.
so much, have a great day.
And then Sheldon, one question, Ron.
Sure.
When you mentioned the journals, either video, audio, or written, has there been like research? Like, is there articles in terms of like college studies in regards to taking subjects and seeing what they do and see what the results are?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't quote you a specific one,
Yeah.
but I can tell you this, that research has been done on like the efficacy
Yeah.
of like journaling. Yeah. But again, you know, it just depends on what your thing is.
Mhm.
You know, I used to recommend journaling to people that really didn't like to write, and guess what? They didn't do it. Or they would do it once and then stop, and then they would develop like guilt and then beat themselves up for not being able to do it. And I'm like, well, that's just making your depression worse. So let's not do that. Like, I always cater to like what a person likes. Some people really like art. They just like, you know, to draw their thoughts. It's whatever works for you, whatever you think is gonna be like most helpful for you. But yes, studies. Fabulous. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Any questions? I appreciate your attention so much. And if you have any questions, just let Annie know. Or like, I'm happy to give you my